Hey, you gotta turn your microphone on for it to actually work. But what I was saying was, hey everyone, I'm so glad you're here to watch a live coaching session. It is a joy and an honor to be able to coach a type 7 today. And you get to watch it happen right before your eyes. So, why are we doing this? Well, we want to introduce you to what coaching someone looks like. Because a lot of people are interested in becoming an Enneagram coach because they're passionate about the Enneagram. It's meant a lot to their life and their relationships, maybe their career, and they want to pay it forward. They want to help that next person, but they don't even know what it looks like. So, we are going to show you live, but the more important thing I want you to see is that we have a free webinar tomorrow, and then we have some on Monday and Tuesday. So, we want you to sign up for this free webinar because in this free webinar, I'm going to lay out exactly what becoming an Enneagram coach looks like and what our course will provide for you. It has all the things that you need to know to make a great decision for you. So I want you to go ahead and sign up, get your seat at enneagramwebinar.com. That's enneagramwebinar.com to get your seat to hear all about becoming an Enneagram coach. Well, today we are going you're going to be able to watch me coach live a type 7. Marty, and she's going to come on here. There she is. Hey, Marty.
Hello, hello.
Hi, good to see you. Okay, so Marty, you were excited to jump in to be coached. Now, the interesting thing is that you've learned just recently, since last fall, you took the course and got certified in December. But you were like, I want to do it. I want to be coached. So tell me, what was so exciting for you? I mean, of course, you're 7, so lots of things were exciting. But what was it that made you raise your hand and you wanted to do this with me today?
Honestly, it just seemed like just such a fun opportunity. And as much as I have done like reading on the Enneagram and I've, been through EIP and I've asked myself the questions, I want someone else to ask me and make me think a little bit more about my own type. And I just want to learn more about, maybe what I struggle with and look at it from a different perspective. So this seemed like a really just fun and eye-opening opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it is so fun. And I was super excited. We talked a little bit earlier, super excited to hear that you have your first client coming up. You've got all the things figured out and worked out, and you're just right there to start this new journey. So I can't wait for you to experience that. What's that like to, get that first client and get ready to actually meet with them?
I am definitely freaking out. I'm super excited. Super excited. Can't believe it's happening. Been praying for a while. Like, please just send me the right people. I just want to, try my hand at this. And
Yeah.
I'm super excited. Also a little nervous.
Absolutely. And so should we all, right? Like when we're
Mhm.
taking a new step in a new direction and have learned a new skill. I mean, if you weren't, I'd be a little nervous, right? Like,
Yes.
So did you feel that the Become an Enneagram Coach course, did it set you up well and getting through the program?
Yes. I really don't have Honestly, I'm a 7. I struggle with structure and I don't have, that business background. So putting it all out there in this organized way of like, here's all the information, which was great because I learned more than I even knew. And then being like, okay, let's hold your hand through the setup process. And that's what I needed. I didn't know this could be, a job, and I didn't know, how to set everything up. So I think it was kind of the best of both worlds of that organization of the business, but also here's what to ask, here's what to do.
Yeah, that's so good to hear, because a lot of certification programs out there will just teach you the Enneagram and maybe how to
Mhm.
coach or how to use it, in a business or like as a coach presenter, but they don't teach you the business side. Like, so then you're
Yes.
stuck and I got to go figure all that out. And it's
Yes.
like, I was like, that makes no sense. Like, that's how I was taught. Like, I didn't even
Mhm.
know how much to charge. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want you all to have that. So I was like, no, we're going to give you guys a foundational understanding of how to set up your business. So I'm really glad to hear that that really helped you
Yes.
to take the next steps. And here you are, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're going to dive into your coaching session. I can't wait. My dad is a 7 with a 6 wing, which I think you said you hold that 6 wing a little bit more than maybe
Mhm.
the 8. So this is going to be really fun for me because I grew up with a 7 with a 6 wing father, which is such an endearing. I mean, I'm a 9, so I think all the types are endearing. But what I love about the 6 with or the 7 with a 6 wing is they're fun, they're optimistic, but they're also grounded and responsible. They're committed, and they're much more apt to stay the course and to actually complete the things that they've set out. Now, of course, that's not all the time. You still are a 7, but I would love to just kind of explore a little bit with you about being a 7. So obviously you just took our course. So, you've used the Enneagram, so you know about yourself, but just for our audience, just to paint a picture and just a kind of refresher for you on the type 7's core motivations. So the 7's core fear is the fear of being trapped in emotional pain, deprived, limited, bored, and definitely missing out on something fun. Then they desire to be happy, fully satisfied, and content, but they struggle with the core weakness of gluttony. And gluttony isn't just about food, though. 7's love a little bit of everything, but the gluttony is really the feeling, this empty feeling inside, and this insatiable desire to fill themselves up with stimulation, fun, excitement, adventure, anything that will fill that void. But it's kind of like having a bucket inside, and they're like, oh, yeah, fill it up. This is great. And I'll do this and I'll do that. And it's so, life's amazing. But it's like there's holes at the bottom and it keeps emptying. And so that's that insatiable desire. And they long to know and hear and experience that you will be taken care of. So just painting that picture, I'd love to hear how does that hit your heart even today? Like what stands out the most?
Yeah, I think the thing from the 7 has always been that need to wanna be content and to be happy. I think learning the Enneagram, I was like, "Doesn't everyone wanna be happy?" Like, isn't like, duh, like, you wanna be happy, you wanna have a fun life, like, that just seemed like, how does everyone not think that? But
Mhm.
I definitely have always struggled with that metaphor you were saying, like, you're trying to fill that bucket up, and for me, it's like, let's go to new restaurants, let's buy a new thing, let's go do this, let's consume something, and no
Mhm.
matter how many clothes you buy or how many food places you go to or how many shows you go see, like, once it's over, there's this like, "Ugh, now what?" And there's always, like, a need to have something ready, because when there's, like, a periods of time where there's not something to look forward to, that's where I can kinda go into that panic mode of, like, "Okay, we need to have if life's not exciting, then I'm not living," kind of
Right.
fear.
Right. Yeah, and I love that picture of if I'm not having fun or it's not exciting or stimulating, then I'm not living life.
Yes.
And what's also amazing for sevens is for a seven, they might look down in a sense inside and feel that emptiness again. And for a lot of other types, they would maybe become melancholy or down or sit with it or not be able to do anything. But most of the time, sevens panic, but what they do is they think about the next fun thing and the next fun
Mm,
thing and the next fun thing. So,
mhm.
and they reframe things like, oh, well, but this could be good and that would be good. Oh, it'll be fine. Everything's going to be great. And so it's almost like they're tricking themselves to not actually take care of what really needs to be taken care of, which is the holes at the bottom. How do we plug those holes up so that there is satisfaction, there is contentment in life? Do you find yourself reframing or rationalizing to yourself? Of course, y'all do it to other people, but can you step back and see how you do that to yourself and kind of trick yourself to not focus on what really will help you?
Yeah, I definitely do, and it's hard to stop it because it's like, I don't wanna be sad, like, I don't wanna waste time feeling bad or
Right.
being down, like, that's a waste of time and energy, and I definitely catch myself, like, I see it happening, I'm like, "Oh, well, if this gets canceled, we'll just do this," or, "If this can't happen, we'll do it this day," like, I just will quickly switch it so we can have something to look forward to, or we can have something fun on the docket, or I'll be like, "Well, I'll just do this instead. It's okay. Like, it's fine. It's okay."
Yeah.
And it is
Well,
still hard to not do.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, so you had said the comment, it's a waste of time to
Mhm,
sit with those emotions or the negative. Can you
mhm.
expound a little bit more on why you think it's a waste of time?
I feel like it's a waste of time because if I go to the more sad feelings or the harder places, then I'm gonna be there for longer than I really want to be there, or it's gonna be too heavy, or I'm gonna just sit and cry, and I once I start crying, it takes me forever to stop, so it's just like,
Mhm.
I don't wanna go down all of that when I could just fix it quickly on my own.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just don't wanna deal with all of that, or we're having a good day, I don't wanna put a damper on it, like, it's just like,
Yeah.
that's not needed, like, to me, it's like it's almost like sad emotions, they're kind of like a burden to life, so it's like, if we can move them out as much as we can, then we're
Mhm.
doing okay, even though that's not the truth.
Right, right. Yeah, because sitting with the reality,
Mhm,
though sevens will see that as being pessimistic or a downer.
mhm,
And that can be true. I mean, there are some people that really go down the pessimistic road and just kind of wallow in it. And so we all can do that. But for the 7, just even entering reality and seeing
Yeah.
it for what it is feels like that.
Yeah.
But it's actually important for all of us to deal with reality as it is. And so, as a reflection back, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this is so you have this empty bucket, and to look inside and to see that it's empty and that now you what are you going to do with that? The 7 mind, the defensive reaction is rationalization and reframing, and so it's like, "Oh, I don't wanna spend time looking at that because that feels negative and sad and too much, and that's just not fun." So, I instead of dealing with the holes that are there, that are causing the actual issue and problem, it feels more beneficial and productive to move to the next fun thing. Does that feel true?
Absolutely. Yep. Mhm.
But if we look at it from a logical standpoint, even though you're grabbing more and more fun things and throwing them in, though that does feel for the moment satisfying,
Mhm.
it's gone. And therefore, there's no lasting and deep satisfaction that you're truly wanting. Is that
Mhm.
accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have learned the hard way, like, you do have to kinda go through the pain to
Yeah.
really have full peace,
Yeah.
but it is always very tempting to go do other stuff,
Yeah.
but yeah.
'Cause you are getting a hit of
Yeah.
enjoyment, a hit
Mhm.
of happiness when you're doing those other things, so that
Mhm.
gluttony feeling of like, "Oh, well, that
Yes.
could be fun, and that would be fun," and it does feel fun for a moment, but how I envision it, there's this really sweet and sad TikTok I saw once, and it was this raccoon, he was so sweet, and he had gotten some, cotton candy, and I guess raccoons wash everything, so they let the
Oh,
poop in
no.
water, and so he took this cotton candy and, I'm sure he's super excited because it's gonna be so amazing, right? And then he washes it in the river, and it's gone, and he's like,
Oh, no.
"Where did it go?" You know? And I feel like that is the life of a 7, like,
Mhm.
the joys of life, the restaurants and the buying something, experiencing things are like cotton candy, like, it's so sweet to the taste and it's so amazing, but it doesn't last and it's not nutritious, it doesn't actually give life and meaning. In hearing that, how does that land on you? Does that feel true to your life? And if so, like, what would be an example of like, "Oh, yeah, that happened to me in this one situation?"
Yeah. I was just really stressed about something or, I'm trying to think. I don't remember why I was stressed, but I know I was, like, upset or maybe worried about something that was gonna happen, and I was like, "I'm going shopping." Like, that was my solution, and on the way there, it was like the tears just started coming, and I had to think back to all of this stuff because I was like, "This is you trying to fill those holes, and you can't. Like, you're not gonna be able to. You're gonna have to just cry it out and
Mhm.
deal with it." And I think it hit because I was like, because you're not dealing with it, you're not even gonna be able to enjoy the fun thing that you planned. And it
Yeah,
was like, "Okay, okay, now I see." But it took, like, it literally building to actually make me stop and think.
yeah. Wow. And I feel like another great example for 7s is Inside Out,
Mhm.
where Joy, the quintessential 7, is trying to get rid of sadness the whole movie.
Yeah.
Like, what a downer she is. And but
Yes.
then at the end, it's so sweet because you see that them working together actually brings the sweetness of life, like the fulfillment of life. And it's not just wallowing in sorrow, and it's not just experiencing joy, but it's all of it together, and
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm hearing that you were able to experience in that moment. Does that seem true?
Yeah, and it's funny with Inside Out that sadness is the one she wants to get rid of and not the other kinda negative emotions. I feel like sadness is the one that is the most scary to
Right.
us to at least to me, it's the one that's like, "Oh, no, sad is just the worst," but
And what
you're
is
right,
what is the feeling when you think of sadness or getting close to sadness?
very feeling trapped because if I'm sad, I feel there's this, like, inner line that's like, you're never going to get out of it. Like, you're going to be sad forever, and this is going to be the reality.
Wow.
Even though, like, I know that's not
That
true. Like,
makes me scared, right? Like,
nothing.
literally, and I'm not even a 7, but, like, yeah, I can totally understand why you don't even wanna get near it. If you would be trapped forever in sadness, if that's the feeling, of course, why you are as a 7 or any 7s would go away from it as fast as possible. That makes me sad for
Mhm.
7s that that's the feeling that rises, that intensity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad, said when my mom and dad went to counseling once, because he got a little carried away with his fun, and what's funny is, as a Christian, his fun was giving too much money away to charity. But it was like these little bits of fun, like, to give money to people, and, like,
Yes.
missionaries and stuff, which is sweet, but then it got a little too much, and it was starting to be harmful for them.
Mhm.
So, anyway, they ended up going to counseling, and what he said was that going to counseling was like going to the dentist without Novocaine, and
Mm.
he said, "Obviously, it's what I needed, and it's what we needed, but man, it was really, really hard." And I think that that's a good picture for people to understand, because there's gonna be a lot of types out there that it's no problem. There's some types that love going to counseling to work out their stuff. But I think it's good for people to hear and picture the severity for the 7
Yeah.
to enter into pain, whether it's a little bit or a lot, because like you said, even entering a little bit, does that mean I'm gonna, like, go down a slide and slip
Yeah.
into sadness and never come out? Is that how
Yeah,
it feels?
it's exactly that slide feeling,
Mhm.
'cause it's like, I don't wanna, 'cause if I even open that door, I'm going down the slide. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, and is anyone gonna catch me? Will I be able to get back out? And if so, what's the
Mhm.
path to get out? And all the 7
Yeah.
knows is to flee to the next fun thing, right?
Mhm.
And that's not really the path of growth, though growth at times can be fun or enjoyable or exhilarating, but a lot of times it's the hard work of doing those first few things that aren't always enjoyable. And
Mhm.
so it makes sense why that's really hard. So I just kind of wanted to paint a picture for everyone on what it looks like from the type 7's perspective. And so what we're going to do from here moving forward is really work on your understanding of Enneagram Internal Profile, which is from our new book, More Than Your Number. And it's a new concept that we have developed that really helps us to understand that we're more than just our main type. And so, where I want to start is with your type 7. So, your main type, there are two parts to you. There's the wounded child and the beloved child. And as we can see here, and let me zoom in because it's a little far from me. There we go. I can see it now. So, the wounded child is that vulnerable, tender part of your heart that has experienced harm and has tried its best since childhood to protect you, but it is ill equipped to do so. And therefore, it's trying to be helpful, but it's not very helpful. So the Bible calls this part of our heart the flesh, the old self, the enslaved self, the blind self, the dead self. And so the biggest thing I want people to recognize with the wounded self is that what we usually do is kind of what Joy in Inside Out did with sadness. We try to just get it away. Like, stop, you're hurting me, you're bothering me, you're not helping me anymore. And that's actually not what this part of our heart needs or what would be beneficial. So this is the part of our heart has tried when we were little and is still trying its best to help us, but it just is ill-equipped. It's young. And so for the 7, you're wounded. Actually, we'll get to that in a little bit. Let me get to the beloved part. And then I just want to hear your thoughts on these two parts of you. So, the beloved part is the spirit filled self that knows your true identity in Christ, which leads to a relationship with God that is all satisfying and joyous and overflows into every area of life. So, this is the spirit filled self, the new creation, the adapted self, the spirit led self, and the alive self. So this is the self, like you kind of see at the end of the movie of Inside Out, where she has that, aha epiphany moment of, wait, I can go through hard moments and be joyful and be satisfied at the same time. So it's a part of our heart that mentors this wounded part of our heart into what's actually true. And there's then rest and freedom. So I just love to hear how do these two parts and learning about them, how does that land on you?
Yeah, I think the wounded child is very much when I'm trying to fix everything or I'm trying to be in control of what I want, get what I want, do everything I want to do. And learning, like, with the beloved child, it's not up always it doesn't need to be up to me to do that. Like, I need to let things happen that are supposed to happen, and even if that means me not getting what I want, like, I gotta relax on that a little bit.
Yeah, man, it's hard, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's see what it looks like specifically for a type 7. So all the 9 types, their wounded and beloved child are going to show up in different ways that are unique and special to them. But so for you as the type 7, the wounded part of your heart as the type 7 fears being trapped in emotional pain, which we just talked about, that slide down and never coming back up, deprived, bored, missing out on something, especially fun. So you are constantly planning for the next fun experience so that that won't happen. If you don't receive that fun thing or the joy, you will become more frenetic in the need to escape pain and trying to really find more fun stimulation. So it's just this ongoing cycle of avoiding what's, needing to be addressed and taken care of and trying to go to the next fun thing. Therefore, it's kind of like just grabbing cotton candy all the time and eating it, but yet never feeling satisfied. What is that experience like for you? Is there a life story or something that you can almost envision or seeing yourself doing this?
Yeah, this is one that I feel like I've noticed throughout my whole life, and it's when fun plans are canceled. That
No.
always hits really hard, and one of those that has I've learned to be like, "Okay, calm down now," but it's like when you're going to the beach and it rains, and it's
Yeah.
like you've been looking forward to it, you're so excited, like and, like, you can't do anything about the rain, like, there's not anything you can do, and
Right?
so it's immediately I remember that, even as a kid being like, "Well, we have to plan something fun, like, we were going to have fun today, we were
Mm,
going to do something great, like, we can't just sit inside, like, we can't just, not do something," like, I went
yeah.
into the frenetic mode of like, well, now we must have a backup plan
Yes.
and very forced backup plan that it just even to this day when, things get canceled, it's like, ugh, it's like a gut punch. And
Mm.
then I have to learn like it's gonna be all right. Like it's not that deep.
Well, and what's interesting is like I can almost sit here and think of several types that would be relieved that it rained. Like I could hear from type 5s or
Yeah.
9s, 4s, lots of or introverts like, oh, that's okay.
Mhm.
I'll be totally fine
Mhm.
inside reading a book or,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And so it's just interesting how for you, it's not okay, well, we'll just shift and do something maybe a little less fun, but it's okay. It's like, no, we have to plan. One, I should have had other ideas in mind so that I don't end up in this spot of feeling disappointed. But if I am disappointed, I now need to make sure that the experience I do have for the day is at the same level as the
Yeah.
beat. It's not like
Oh,
less,
that the same level, that is
which I'm
that
sure
hits.
in some ways is impossible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, how do you beat the beach, right? Like,
Can't, yeah.
that's pretty hard to do. Like, okay, so you go to the movie because it's raining, but
That's
really?
not
Like,
ever yeah.
and so I'm sure that just feels, like you said, like a gut punch,
Mhm.
And so the wounded child part of the 7 is, and like you said, they're always in the best case thinking, the planning.
Mhm.
And it's different than the 6 who's preparing for worst case scenarios.
Mhm.
The 7 doesn't wanna sit in that negative space, but they're planning for a lot of contingencies in the sense of, "Okay, well, if it rains on the beach, then we can go do this, and there's that," or, "If I'm bored because I have to go to this dinner with my family, what are the other fun things that I can incorporate?" So they're constantly thinking of the next best thing to do and a way to escape if they're stuck somewhere. Does that seem true?
Absolutely. Yes, yes.
And so there's that frenetic energy because it's so afraid of being trapped and stuck. So that's the wounded child, and it's trying to help you to plan. But the beloved child can come in and assist in this way because life is life, and we do have to deal with it for what it is in the healthiest way we can so that we can actually have a joyful life. It may not always be happy, but it can be joyful. And so for the 7, the beloved child knows that it's fully cared for. It trusts that all that it longs for is has already been given to you through all that Christ has. It is a co-heir with Christ. So all the blessings that Christ has is yours. And when your heart is aligned with the gospel, you can drink from Christ's spring of living water and be fulfilled with radiant joy by his provision and care. What does that feel like and when you hear it right now?
Yeah. I think there's a piece of me that's like I always like struggle with like, can he really do that? You know, can he really be the one to satisfy everything? It's that little doubt piece. But when I do, I've noticed through my life, when I do give it up to him and just let him work, things change. Like,
Yeah.
or something out of my control will happen. And I'm like, okay, I have to relax and let you take charge. I don't need to be
Mm.
freaking out over what's happening. I need to just let you handle it. And it's been a constant struggle for me to do that. There's times in life where it's really easy, like to be like, okay, you just take it. But then there's times where I've had to like go down the rabbit hole of planning and then come back and be like, okay,
Yeah.
this isn't up to me.
What has it been like to then rest in his provision and his care, even if it doesn't line up with what you would have ultimately wanted? What does, when you actually do it, what does it feel like?
There's a lot of resistance at first. I feel like
Mhm.
there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of like, why didn't that happen? Or why couldn't this happen? There's a lot of me questioning it. And I
Mhm.
think just kind of having to sit back and trust and then know like, okay, something that even if I don't get to know why happened, I have to be okay with it. Or just there's a reason for it. Like I think reminding myself that, but that is still very hard to do.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine. When you do get to that place where you do surrender and trust in his provision, whatever that is, and you're actually in that place of kind of surrender and trust, and he actually does deliver in the way that he designed and his, all-knowing, all-loving, and all-providing way, which again, probably isn't lined up with how you would, but you're in that position where you're like, okay, I see your goodness. I see that you bring good things even in the hard places of life. What does that feeling feel like?
I'm trying to think of a good example. The example that comes to my mind is honestly, I think about like I'm now engaged to my fiance, and on paper he was not what I would have ever expected. He's a type 5 introvert.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I look back at all I went through the breakups and the pain and the struggle with it and couldn't figure out why things weren't working for me. And then this man comes in my life and it's like not what I expect. I see once we were together, like how good this was and how good they were for me. And it's like, okay, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I understand. Like that's why I went through the struggles to get to
Mm.
this relationship. And it's just, again, it was not what I expected. And if I were to like paint an Enneagram type, it was not going to be a 5.
Right.
So it was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And yet it's so beautifully written, right? Like when we take a step back and we look at the story he has written and is writing, we're like, oh, like hindsight's always 2020, right?
Yes.
And it brings a sense of calm and
Mhm.
a sense of assurance, even if it's not what we would have chosen. And it's not a one or nothing. It's not that the wounded child is there and not the beloved, or the beloved is there and not the wounded. They're both always there, but which one is actually driving the bus of your life in the moment, right? So they're both always going to be there. So even when you are trusting and at rest and know God is your provision and your care and you're feeling that, it doesn't mean that the wounded child's not like, really? Are we sure about this? Like,
Yeah.
can I just bring to your attention that he's a type
Mhm.
5 and he doesn't like surprises and he doesn't like spontaneity. Like, is this gonna work? You know? And there's gonna always be that tension. And I
Mhm.
think for a 7, that's hard, right? That
Yeah.
tension, because it's like you're always wanting the positive, the fun, the joy. As you've kind of grown older and you're seeing that tension, kind of like we said with Inside Out, are you at a place where you're able to kind of take a step back and see it for what it is and trust the process a little bit more? Now, it's not like all the time, but
Yeah.
are you able to see it a little bit more? And if so, what is that like for you?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely see this. I see the wounded child, and I definitely see it be that annoying, like, voice that's nagging, and if I feed into it, it just almost never goes well, and I think I've had to learn, even when I'm in that space, like, I try to sit back and think about, everything we learned with the Enneagram and the beloved child, and, okay, remember that's like, try to recognize it, and that's so hard. I feel like it's so hard to recognize it, to be like, I don't need to listen to it. I'm gonna
Mhm.
be okay if I don't listen to it.
Yeah.
And it's easier in some moments than others.
Yeah. And I think what's important for us is if we visualize, these kids on a school bus and the bus driver, the one that should be driving the bus, who's an adult and mature, knows how to drive a bus, the beloved child is in the back of the bus taking a nap, but the bus is going, someone's got to take the wheel. And so the wounded child is just like, I've got to do something here, but it's like a little kid. So it's just all over the place. It's trying its best and it's doing what it thinks is the best to help you, but it's just ill equipped. It really doesn't. So what we want to do is not shame it, condemn it, um, uh, push it aside, try to get rid of it because it's going to be there. And what we want to do is see it, to attune to it. Now, again, this in itself is going to be hard for 7 because it's reality. It's not always going to be the fun spot to go. But if we were to look at our wounded child and really picture it for who it is, I think we would be so much more loving and compassionate and thankful, right? Like, wow, you're really just trying your best. Like you saw that the wheel is just vacant. You're trying to help from your perspective. Thank you. And that's not helpful anymore. And I think you will be much more happy if you just take a seat behind the beloved child who drives the bus because you'll feel calm and we're actually heading to the place that we all actually want to go. And that's feeling satisfaction and contentment. It just looks different than what the wounded child thinks it should look like. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes. Mhm.
And so I think the biggest thing is that we need to attune ourselves to this wounded child and thank it and care for it while mentoring it into what is actual truth. Such a hard thing. Easy concept, very hard
Mhm.
thing to do because I know when my wounded child is driving the bus, it feels 100% like reality. And it is
Yeah.
really hard to get her to hear the beloved child come up and want to take the wheel because she is so scared that no one it's not going to really happen and that she knows what's best and she's going to take care of me, which never works. And
Yeah.
so the beloved child has to be tender and understanding to assist her to get out of the seat and to let the beloved child drive the bus. So it's really easy concept, very hard to do. But over time, the more we practice it, the more it's actually going to take place. But it's never going to be like done, which is really
Mhm.
hard.
Yeah.
For me as a 9, it's really hard because it's like, okay, like, haven't I learned my lesson? Like, haven't we figured this out now? Can't we just, like,
Yes.
not deal with this ever again?
Yes.
Um, but I think the realization and the acceptance that life is always gonna be a push and pull. The wounded child's gonna jump in the seat of the bus or try to shove the beloved out of the seat because it knows what's right. Like, there's gonna always be this push and pull, but that's okay. Like God's already redeemed us. He already has set in motion good things to happen. And we can rest in the truth, not in our own provision and our own care. So, with that being said, I'd love to take a step into looking at the connecting parts. So, we just talked about your type 7 wounded and beloved child, but each of us have 4 connecting parts of our basic EIP. So, for you, it's for everyone, it's their wings and those 2 lines that they're connected to, the 2 types, we call those Enneagram paths. And so for you, the 2 wings are 6 and 8, and then your paths are 1 and 5. And those 4 play an influence in your life. They have their own core motivations, their perspective of life, the way they would do things. And they're trying to chime in and convince you. Now, when the wounded child is driving the bus, the rest of these parts are freaking out too because the wounded child is all over the place. So they're chiming in from a frenetic place and desperate, but they're coming from their own perspective. The 8 has its own way of doing things, and the 5 and the 1 and the 6. And all of a sudden, you are flooded with lots of different pieces of information, direction, and it can get really chaotic inside, and you feel very pushed and pulled. And this is where, like, let's say someone, this will be a great example with your fiance. So you're like, hey, let's go out for some pizza and a movie with our friends, like right now. He's going to feel pulled both.
Mhm.
That sounds kind of fun because I want to be with you and I love our friends. And I also don't want to do that at all because that just landed on my plate and that feels too much. So we all have these parts of us that feel pulled. And so for the 7, you're going to feel that pull from these types and they're going to chime in. Now, again, when the beloved child is driving the bus, just like a really good bus driver, guess what? We all get to sit back, relax, and enjoy life and have influence from a healthier perspective. So let's see what that actually looks like. And I'd love to hear how these parts chime in from either the wounded or the beloved. So the wounded part of your heart, when it's driving the bus, your 6 wing will demand loyalty and become dependent on others in response to feeling of self-doubt inside. Then the 8 part of your heart's going to chime in. And now there's lots more that the 6 would do, but we're just going to highlight one thing. The 8 wing will resist feedback from others and encourage you to do what you want to do. Like, no, we're going to do it our way. It's our way or the highway. The 1 part of your heart is going to be critical towards you and others for depriving you of fun. Okay. So it's a little different than maybe the actual 1, like how the 1 would actually be. They're more critical from a 7 viewpoint of, oh no, you're not going to keep me from fun and I'm going to judge you for it. Then the 5 is going to isolate you and make you less reflective to avoid pain. So maybe you're going to pull back from the negative situation so that you're not having to deal with the reality, the negativity, being deprived or limited. So withdrawing might be, or getting out of it might be a way for the 7 to avoid that. So I'd just love to hear, how do these parts show up? And maybe you don't have one example that they all chimed in, and maybe you do, but how do these parts kind of show up?
Oh man, I feel like I can see them all happening. Especially that 6 with the self-doubt, it's immediately like I have to almost like externally just like vent, and I need that reassurance from other people to be like, this is happening. Like I need you to like tell me if, I need that reassurance so bad to get it out of my system. Like if it's not directed at someone, that like worry, if I don't get it out in front of someone, then it's just going to sit inside me. And people don't always like that. They don't always like to be bombarded with
I
with the
don't know why,
stress.
right?
And it's like that's the most important thing right now, and it's not, but that's how it feels.
Yes.
But that self-doubt comes out for
Mhm.
sure.
What about the 8? How does that show up?
You know,
And what's interesting, I just want to paint the picture for everyone else. So 6 is more of the wing that shows up more often maybe for you, or you recognize it more often, but we do use both wings. And so the 8 might happen less often, but what I find is that people just are less aware or attuned
yeah.
to how these parts show up because they may not be come up as often or in the ways that we thought they would. But when we take some time to step back and go, oh, I see you. So we do use both wings to varying degrees. So for you, 8 might be a little bit less, but when or how does it show up?
This example right here, like, this happened yesterday for me, which is just so funny, the resisting the feedback. Like, I had something go on at work, and I was, like, venting to coworkers about it, and they immediately gave me so many solutions, and I was, like, just immediately irritated. I was like, I didn't want that. I just wanted to tell you and be done." And I was like, their feedback was good. Like, I knew it was good, but then I had to kinda do it. I didn't do what they said. I had to put my own spin on it to make it, like,
Right.
mine. And I did that. I was like, wow, that there was that 8 piece that I didn't quite recognize in that moment.
Yeah. And that's why it's so great with the Enneagram is we don't for ourselves, we don't always know why we're doing certain things or certain things are being activated within us, especially being pulled. Like, where is this all coming from? But that's what the Enneagram is so amazing because we get to read or learn about these different parts of us and why they're doing what they're doing. Because we're going to see here how each of these are a blessing when they're following the beloved child and we're healthy versus when we're not, they're not so great. Like you said, like, you're not helping me, like, go away. Um, and so that's why it's important for us to understand these parts of us so that we can see when they are activated, whether negatively or positively, because seeing how they positively show up, then we can incorporate them in our life all the more, right? Because it's like, oh, yeah, I could actually use that part of me right now. And it's easily accessible. So I always talk about, your main type. Let's say your main type is a filet mignon, and you're cooking this filet mignon. And it's going to be amazing, right? Well, you wanna season it, and you wanna season it well, and the seasoning enhances what it already is. So we're not trying to change you as a type 7 with these different parts of you. We want these parts to bring out the very best of who you are. And so salt and pepper, some oil, maybe, some spices, the things that can really draw out the best of what you are. But if we over season, too much salt, too much pepper, too much butter, too much garlic, anything, that is not a good situation. And that's what the wounded child kind of looks like. It's like, that's not helpful. That is not doing me any good. And so we want to bring it into that beloved space. So that being said, how does the type 1 show up? Do you see that kind of critical? One of my favorite examples, if I can say it real quick, is Michael Scott in The Office. It's the episode when Kevin thought he might have skin cancer, and it's Michael's birthday, and so everyone is fixated on Kevin, of course, like, waiting all day to hear the results, and Michael is just beside himself and critical that everyone's focusing on Kevin when it's my birthday. And so it's a criticalness of depriving or limiting me or not allowing me to have the fun. Now, that's not how it always is with the type 1 can chime in with perfectionism and wanting things just right. But how has your one showed up in that kind of way?
Yeah, yeah. I really I hate my one sometimes because I have a very loud inner critic with that, and it's only in those really tough times, and when I very first read about the stress path to one, it immediately took me back to being a kid at the
Mm,
kitchen table doing math homework, which was, like, just the absolute worst, and there was just so much wanting to get it perfect so we can be done,
yeah.
and I was so bad at math, so it was such a struggle, and I was mad at myself for not being able to do it, getting really perfectionistic about it. Also getting mad at my mom because she wouldn't let me quit doing it, and so it was just this, you're stuck at the table until we get it done, and
Yeah.
that's where my mind goes every time I read the one, because there was a lot more math classes, so there was a lot of that moment coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man, I can almost feel it right now, and especially, my son, he the same way. He's a 6 with a 7 wing, but I can totally see that happening. Okay, so then the 5 part of your heart, how do you see the 5 wanting to pull you out of situations and isolate you so you don't have to experience it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an actual example. And this is where for a little bit I was like, am I a 9? Because every time there would be like conflict or something that wasn't enjoyable or something negative, like, or even just watching a show that was like sad or heavy, it's immediately remove, immediately go to the other room, look away. Like, and I think that is that 5 piece coming out of when it's even a boring conversation. Like, I don't have the time for it. It's just, I'm gonna change the subject or I'm just gonna walk away,
Yeah.
which is not very kind, but I
Well,
see that now.
so the 5 really shows up the most. We call it the blind spot path, in how we teach at YEC, and it usually shows up with family, less, with just everyone. So, not that it can't, but so, like, my dad, like, he would come home from a full day of work, and he's kinda tired and exhausted, and he would kind of check out, remove himself, read the newspaper, eat some snacks, watch the TV, but in kind of this
Mhm.
isolated, even though he was in the same room with us, you knew he was recharging, he was doing his thing, and kinda don't bother that space, but he's a 7, and he wanted to have lots of fun, but he definitely needed that recharge time, and it was a little bit for the family like, where's our 7?" Like, everyone else gets the 7, and we're seeing this, of course, back then we didn't know this terminology, but we're seeing this 5 space. Why don't we get the 7? Well, he used all the 7 up at work, with all the other people. Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, because my actual job is recruiting, so I am talking all day. I'm in, chatting with people. It's a very extroverted heavy job, which is great, but I do when I feel like by the time I'm done, like I can barely speak in full sentences anymore, and I just want to get on TikTok and just scroll and like be
Mhm.
completely checked out and
Yeah,
just filled with funny, like I just want to watch happy mindless videos because it's like, oh, it's easy, it's fun, it's just that entertaining piece, but
yeah.
it's effortless.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to recognize how these wounded parts show up, they're trying to benefit you. There's something that needs to take place, but it's just they're just doing it in a way that's ill-informed, ill-equipped, not helpful. So the more we can see that and not bring judgment and shame onto ourselves, and when that happens, we need to remind ourselves, okay, this isn't a place for judgment. Like, we're secure in Christ. He loves us. He is taking care of everything. Therefore, I can see this as it is, accept it, own it, but also depend back on the gospel to bring me to newness in life. And then that's when it's not us pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps and just making us healthy. That's just not how it works. It's the Holy Spirit working in through us, but we have to surrender and depend on him to do that work through us, and trusting that the truth is the truth and he has set us free. So when we're in that restful place, that trusting place, your beloved child parts are going to show up. So your beloved child's in the driver's seat. Now that doesn't mean the wounded child isn't trying to like take over or has its things to say. But the beloved child's like, we got this. It's okay. Just take a second. Let's see what happens. And so then your 6 wing is going to show up and it's going to gift you with true loyalty and commitment to others and help you to finish what you started. So being responsible. The 8 is going to gift you with confidence and groundedness with reality. So it's going to help that 7 to really be in the moment, even though it feels like we've got to get going, right? And so the eight's like, no, we can do this. We can look at reality, we can see truth, and we can deal with it. The 1 path is going to help you and gift you with principles that will guide you, help you to have clear focus and a sense of responsibility. So it's going to say, hey, let's have fun, let's have spontaneity, but actually, it's going to be way better when we complete things, when we actually do things the right way, because we'll actually feel more fulfillment and joy. And then the 5 path is going to gift you with self awareness and honesty, and it's going to calm your reactivity tendencies. And this is where it's like, yeah, you know what? This is kind of a rough moment, but let's ponder on it. Let's work through this. We can kind of actually, what 5s are really great about is taking things and pulling it apart and looking at it, and then trying to put it back together again in the right way. So, how do these show up in your life and gift you?
I do really see the 6. I do still struggle with, finish what you start, but I definitely put more value on it now, the older I've gotten, just knowing, like, even with, becoming an Enneagram coach, like, even if I get one client, I don't just want to stop after that. Like, it's like, just because you did one thing, like, you can't
Yeah.
be done. Like, keep going, keep holding yourself accountable, which
Right.
I've had to kind of work on that, but I've seen that really come through. But
Mhm.
I've also seen the commitment to other people. Just because I wouldn't want people to flake on me, and I wouldn't want, someone to not be fully present with me. So learning to make sure I do that with other people.
Right.
Um, the 8, I'm having a hard time coming up with an example of like really being grounded in reality. I know I have to work on
Yeah.
that.
I think just like even where you are right now in having this new client, like you are needing to be grounded and take the next steps with confidence that you've been trained, you're ready, you're prepared, you're going to get them the tools and the how you guys are going to connect and meet, over Zoom or whatever it is. Like it's going to ground you in reality to make this actually happen. Does that sound right?
You're right. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And like knowing like even if it doesn't go
Mhm.
really well, like it's okay. At least you were doing it. Like at least you're learning from it. Um,
Absolutely.
and I see the one come up a lot for me in work. Like I feel like if people work with me, they probably think I'm a one because that's this time that I'm organized. That's the time that I'm focused. That's the time where like details matter.
Mhm.
Even though I still mess up on details, it's like I definitely put more of a emphasis on that because I'm putting something out there to people and I want it to be, done right.
Yeah, absolutely. So important, right? And then what about 5?
This one, definitely learning to calm reactionary tendencies. So if something like doesn't go my way, that it's so hard. I hear the fire alarm goes off, but then it's like, okay, well, do we really need to
Yeah, is
react
that a
that
false
way?
alarm?
Yeah.
Do I really need to panic and, like, flee to the next thing? Yeah.
And like noticing like, okay, we need to be honest with ourselves on our expectations,
Mm,
like really be honest on what we're really wanting out of something or what we're wanting out of someone else and being like, is that really what we need?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, because the 5 and the 1, well, actually, all of these are going to want to know the facts, right? The 7,
yeah,
not so much. Like, I just want the fun
I
just
know.
give me the fun information. Like, let's keep all the other stuff out, and the rest of these are very attuned to truth and insight and knowledge and authenticity, which is awesome because it's going to ground the 7. So you're still gonna be a
Yeah.
7, you're still gonna want fun and joy and radiance and, sweetness of life, which is great. We love that in our 7s. Yet, we don't want it to slip into the wounded part where it's then frenetic and it's off doing its own thing, and it's not actually helping you or others, but it actually is helping, um, you be grounded. So that's why I love the analogy of like a steak and enhancing what already God has created you to be with these other connecting types that can is a true blessing when we are resting in gospel truth. So just to kind of wrap it up, I would just love to hear now that you kind of see both sides because they're all there, like right. So it's unhealthy, healthy, misaligned, aligned. How is this going to help you kind of in an everyday life circumstance to experience life to its fullness, but also not to shame and condemn, but to grow and to learn?
Mhm. And I think just what you said a moment ago about a better appreciation for the facts and the information and reality, I think kind of the more I've worked through this, I have had more of an appreciation for that because if it's reality, it's real. It could really happen because if you live in fantasy land, it may not happen, and that could lead to disappointment. So
Right.
being in reality is really important. And I think having the sides of the wounded child and the beloved child is kind of just like a gauge for okay, I'm slipping into this side, I can recognize it, and, like, sitting with it to be like, "Okay, wounded child, what do you really need, and why are you coming up?" Even if it's like, "I'm feeling trapped," like, I know I'm feeling trapped, but why? Why is this coming up right now? Why is it happening in this moment? Like, just kinda asking it more questions
And
to
also, I would encourage you to look at your wounded child like that little girl at the table with the math, like, what did she need? Like, what did what did she hope for or need from someone older, wiser, loving for her to come in? And that's really who you get to be right now for her.
It's a really good perspective. Yeah.
And it's hard because it evokes emotions, it brings up pain, and yet at the same time, it allows her to release and grieve and also trust in a new way.
Absolutely. But overall, I think it's just a really good kind of roadmap to see where you are when you're struggling and okay, here's the healthier way to look at it. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of like I know you explain things like that rumble strip, but I think this is another really great way to see that rumble strip with all the different paths.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marty, thank you so much for being here, being vulnerable and transparent. Sometimes that's not easy, but I hope it's been beneficial for you, but I know it's gonna be beneficial for others just to see what's it like to get coached, to be a coach. And this is just, we're kinda doing a kind of a sample session. It looks a little bit different, but it's very similar because, I would actually take you through a very specific path, in growth. But I just hope that this has been really beneficial to you.
Yes, absolutely. It's been awesome.
Good. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Awesome.
Well, guys, that is a great example of what it's like to be an Enneagram coach and to walk people through their own story a little bit by little bit, helping them to see why they do what they do from all the parts that are represented within them, from that wounded child to the beloved child, from a misaligned way of thinking and believing to actually seeing what's true. And it's not that, hey, we learn it, we're done, we're free forever, we're on this side of heaven. But having a coach come alongside you and to guide you through the process, to listen, to be a friend, to be a mentor, and allow you to process your life is so invaluable. So we have a free webinar tomorrow and then I think one or two next week, where you can learn what it's like to become an Enneagram coach and how to become an Enneagram coach. So I'm going to walk you through that all in a live webinar. It's free. So get your seat now at enneagramwebinar.com. And we can't wait to show you how to pay forward to others and to bless others in the way that you have been blessed as well. So again, join us at enneagramwebinar.com to get your seat at the free webinar, and we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.